Hello and welcome back to the J&Z podcast. My name is Jace Van Ort,
And I'm Zeth Makala.
and today it is a brand new year, brand new season of our show. We're done with season 1, moving on to season 2. Doesn't mean that we're not going to be continuing our series though. We had the pleasure of watching the very first of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man, and I have quite a bit to say about it. How about you, Zeth?
Oh, I have quite a bit to say about it too. Well, I'm really interested. What did you think?
I have very mixed. Like certain parts of it, but other parts I really don't like. Now, I'm more curious about you. You said first and foremost that Andrew Garfield is your favorite Spider-Man. Is that
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yeah, he is.
So, now that I've watched this movie, it has been a decade or so. What what makes you like him more than the others? Now that I'm able to kind of see what his characteristics are and all that.
So when I was younger, when I first watched this, I thought he was a good Spider-Man, but not so much a good Peter Parker. But rewatching these, I've come to realize he's really, really good as both, in my opinion. With Spider-Man, he matches the exact physique of the comics. He's that very skinny, uh, good built to him though, but he's able to pull off those moves where his feet can touch his head when he's swinging. Uh, that's just the type of physique Spider-Man's always had in the comics, and Andrew Garfield matches that exactly. He's super scrawny and tall. As Peter Parker, I really didn't like him as much as Tobey's portrayal originally because I thought he wasn't dorky enough. And I thought it was kind of weird that he was more of like he was a nerd, but it was more like a closeted nerd. Uh,
Yeah, there's something off about the way he perfectly, maybe it's a fair bit exaggerated, but he pretty well like in cases he's the embodiment of like an angsty teenager in this one a little bit. Not really angsty, but very socially awkward and doesn't have a whole lot to say, stumbles over. I think they do it a bit too much, but sometimes they, like I said, they do it too much. Sometimes it's kind of hard to watch it. He's just sitting there just saying nonsense, just being all weird, and I
I don't
don't
know. I
really
mean,
think
but
of Peter Parker that way.
I've kind of come to love it because it's more of a grounded take on Spider-Man compared to the MCU version or the Tobey Maguire version. And this is like the most realistic of a Spider-Man you can get. Like the costume, for instance, it's like a do-it-yourself, like in the basement type thing. Like it's showing him print like use a t-shirt printer and sunglasses and stuff. And so this was just a more grounded Peter Parker where he's not necessarily a total dork, but it's more so what would happen if a kid was left by his parents and didn't know anything about them or the mysteries that surrounded him and grew up, with an aunt and uncle and got bit by a spider.
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel about like the beginning and just the entire plot of his father? They didn't go into his parents very much, but they at least showed them a little bit, unlike the first movie. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think they should have just kept it Aunt May and Uncle Ben, or should they? Do you appreciate that they kind of explained a little bit what happened, or at least hinted at it?
No, I appreciate it was a little different. Um, the second movie kind of delves a little too deep into that, but with this one, it was just the right, perfect amount of balance, in my opinion.
I do. I how did he make the suit? Not the first one, but like the actual Spider-Man suit, because I do not remember that part of the movie. Like, how did he get his hands on it?
Oh, it was just like a quick little flash. It wasn't really a big deal, like with Tobey Maguire, where it showed it like designing every aspect of the suit. This one, it was more like he pressed like a t-shirt press, and then he like cut some glasses out or something like that, and he stuck them in, and that was it. It was like a 2-second clip.
Okay, okay, I totally missed it, and I hate that suit design. By the way,
You do?
his
I love it.
actual. I don't like the eyes. I don't like it has like this weird basketball looking texture on it. It just does not vibe well with me. I don't know why.
I loved it. I thought it was. It was perfect.
I like Uncle Ben here quite a bit. I
Hmm.
don't like having to see it again, but I think that was I like the opening scene. Not the opening, but the when Parker, Ben feels like an actual like mentor grown adult. He talks sense to Parker, but he talks to him like he's an adult. He treats him very well and loving, and it's very nice to see. And I like the way that they go about, yeah. What are your thoughts on Uncle Ben?
Yeah, I like him too.
How does he compare to you against the Tobey Maguire's Uncle Ben?
I could care less about the original one.
Me too.
This one I like a lot more because with Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker, he's in there for like 5 seconds and then he gives his little speech about great power and then that's it. And the one thing I like about this is there's a little more build up to their snap. So for instance, it's Peter being out a little late there than usual. Then he's forgetting stuff. Then all of this happens and it's a slow build up and then Peter, berates his uncle about it. It's not just like his uncle sits him down and is like trying to be nice and Peter's just like, forget it. It's like this build up. It's a natural build up, which I like. And then to top it off, you actually see him getting shot this time. And that's a lot more dramatic than the original.
It feels a lot more believable. Like it kind of is one of the better parts of the movie to me because it you can see that he's out looking for Peter. He's concerned about him, but he's just kind of taking a stroll at night, kind of enjoying things. But he's the one that stepped into action, tried to stop the guy. It's a very good scene in my opinion. It flows very nicely, and I know I'm talking about somebody dying, but it builds the way it builds up is pretty well done.
And then Andrew Garfield's acting when he's like putting his hands on the body and stuff. That it breaks your heart watching it.
Yeah, and the way when they bring it up at the end of the movie, his message and how all these steps kind of make you as a person who you are, and he gets to learn from it. He moves on with his life from there on, and it's very nice to see, and it feels how it's supposed to be for Spider-Man. Spider-Man's supposed to lose somebody very close to him, Uncle Ben specifically, and I feel this is just about the perfect way to go about doing it.
What did you think about Aunt May?
Aunt May was fine.
I liked
She
her a
was
lot more in this one.
I like the old lady. Come on. You got to have a
I
little soft spot for the
Okay,
old lady.
the old lady, yes, it's comic accurate. She's a sweet old lady, yes, and her acting when it's needed, it's great. But this one I like a lot more just because it makes a whole lot more sense. She's a lot more protective of Peter now that Ben's dead. She's staying up late, watching out for him and trying to see where the heck is this kid. The old one, I understand he's graduated and so you don't really have to get to see it, but it's kind of like she doesn't care almost, I guess. I don't know.
Right, right. Yeah, I see where you're coming from and how she gets concerned because he keeps getting beat up, all these bruises on his face. One last part before we really dive into the whole story. What do you think about Gwen Stacy? I know we discussed it earlier, but I think that was an excellent Gwen Stacy.
No, I think everything about surrounding Gwen is really nice. The romance is 10 out of 10. The way she looks is 10 out of 10. Everything about that part doesn't feel thrown out the window kind of or cringy like it was in the original trilogy.
There's still some moments. Like, there's absolutely no reason for her to like Peter. No, there's no reason whatsoever. He's like a weird loser. There's no way in real life that would be happening.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
But that's something I'm able to look past. She was very good at her role, and it certainly added to the film, her being there. Now, for the actual meat and potatoes of this thing, how do you like the main villain, the lizard?
I love him. I love the actor that portrays him. The design is a little bit off in my opinion, mostly the in the face department, just because his face is a little more human. It's like they tried to make it way too much human mixed with the lizard, and instead of going like the full blown comic where it looks like an alligator's mouth and stuff, it looks more like the Goombas from the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings on the lizard. I
Really?
think he's my least favorite one so far. And for
Really?
certain reasons. I like Kurt Connors. And I appreciate what he's trying to do. I wouldn't mind being a 7 foot tall lizard right now, to be honest, but I don't like the way they have to use the lizard in fights and such. That's my big complaint. He's gross to look at, and he's just not as cool as the other ones. You know, Doc Ock has these robot arms. Green Goblin throws these grenades. Even like in Sandman and Venom, Venom's just cool. Sandman, like I mentioned in the last episode, it was really sweet when Harry like kicked up the board and he turned him into glass for a second. That was awesome. But he's just like a big lizard. Like there's only so much you could do with it. He can punch and he can regrow his tail and stuff, but that's the lizard. He can crawl. The story behind him's fine. I think, yeah, that was my one complaint was it just wasn't very cool. But you can understand why he wants to get his arm back. You can understand why he wants to turn everybody into lizards. Kinda, it's messing with his brain, and he's thinking, this is the next step for humans, all that stuff. So in general, I think he's all right. I just as a villain, I wish there was more. Like if he had laser eyes or something, that'd be really cool. I'm kidding. I don't need him to have laser eyes, but you know what I'm saying. In general, though, I don't have a whole lot to say. I don't think like it was a very pretty good plot. There were some slow parts for sure. I felt, and I know it sounds just dumb, but I have to think about this. Do you have any scenes that kind of either stood out to you in a good way or any scenes that were just kind of okay?
Every single swinging scene was phenomenal, especially when you saw that in the theater. And one thing I never noticed before when I was rewatching this was if you watch him swinging, he slowly learns. It's not just like Tobey Maguire where he gets the costume and he's perfect at it and he's swinging, perfectly. In this one, if you watch, it's uh, he wall swings the majority of the movie, and then at the end, when the cranes all come together, that's the first time you actually see him swinging like Spider-Man. Every other scene before that, it's like him. He's got his one web whipped to a wall, and he's like running on the wall.
Yeah, I did like the web swinging in this one. I liked the cool camera angles. They kind of experimented with it. Went first person. They went, all that stuff. It was really cool, and I did like the ending there too with the cranes. It was a nice callback to earlier,
One thing I recommend,
and
they splice together this trailer, and remember that scene where it's like POV shots.
yeah,
It's like 1 minute of a one cut shot of that. In the movie, they cut it and they splice it, but in the trailer, it's all just one shot of that POV shot, and it's amazing.
that does sound super cool. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Alrighty, anything else you want to bring up?
No, I just, in my opinion, I think this was a competent, well done reboot for the first movie, at least, not the second one. But I still find it very entertaining, and I would rather watch this one than even like any of the Tobey Maguire ones. I just find this one really entertaining. I love Spider-Man 2, but this one is just so rewatchable for me. With Spider-Man 2, you watch it like once a year. This I could watch probably like 5 times a year and be fine with it.
If the not saying the fights are bad. I like the mannerisms. I like how he's more spider-like in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it honestly is the villain holding it back a bit. Not in ideology, but just in sheer ability. I wish that he could have some more cooler fights. There was no fights that were like, oh, that's super cool. Like the Doc Ock fight on the train. You remember that. You kind of remember Green Goblin swinging into town and blowing stuff up for different reasons. Those were just kind of memorable moments, but I don't really remember any fights because there's nothing. He just fights in the sewer, and it's just there's nothing special. They just kind of fight.
All right. Well,
But
I wasn't expecting that opinion from you though. But so one enjoys it a lot, and the other one not so much.
it's adequate. It is what it is. I just don't see how it's the end all be all that he's the best Spider-Man or Peter Parker or whatever. Especially considering that this is the best we get. The next one, I'm sure.
The
It
next
doesn't
one I'm
do any
excited to
favors
talk
either.
about because, my opinion, since I've rewatched it, it's definitely climbed the ranks.
Yeah, and in general, it's way more fun to talk about, like a
A
bad
bad
movie
movie
than
than
an average movie.
yeah.
So we look forward to that. We'll be there next week, and we'll get this out ASAP. So yeah, thanks again for watching. If you want, you can leave a like down below. Let us know what you want us to talk about, and you can listen to us at any of the podcasts listed below as well. Thanks again for watching, and see you guys later.
Bye.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction.